I'm happy to get started. And I know Shayla will zoom in, I think. Is there public comment? Anyone there?
Nobody.
That might be the place for me to share that last time I said I had drafted something to put on Front Porch Forum or in the paper in response to some of the comments that have been in those places about statements that nobody ever listens to us. And I had drafted it when I was here at the last meeting, and but I didn't send it till yesterday. I don't know if you saw it, but I did put it on Front Porch Forum yesterday. And I wasn't addressing the tax issue. I was really addressing the who's listening issue because of what we're doing.
It was well written, Chapin. It was really well written, very level-headed, understandable, and clear.
Thank you, Steve.
People will still take you to task for it, but
I know.
Thanks for correcting that link today for the minutes, Chapin and Emily. Do we want to
thanks
move
for
into
that.
the?
You're welcome. When I edited the minutes, which I did very teeny bit, I did it as commenter so that it would show. So there's right there is where the red is where I plan to post. I hadn't already posted.
Any interest on that posting for the tech position yet, or you don't know yet till it closes?
I think Erin has gotten some good applications. She's handling it, so we won't know who's who until it closes.
Cool.
I just noticed I misspelled quick stop. I misspelled the misspelling. It's KWIK.
There you go. Nice.
And I didn't know what the sentence after that was supposed to say. What activities could be allowed in the ARZD? And ARZD, I meant art. Is that the residential zoning district is called ARZD? It's not the ag rural.
That's agro, so
Yeah.
I might just put RZD and ARZD, because I think we're kind of talking
Yes,
about.
because we talked about the rural as well, like could you have a campground, could you have paintball or, yeah. So both of them, what activities could be allowed that would be compatible, but to me, not currently allowed. It's thank you.
Anyone want to propose with these edits?
Without Shayla and Megan, who's making sure they're right.
That's true. Megan usually is the stickler on things.
Yeah.
Oh, here comes Shayla.
Oh, good. Let's not vote until she's said.
Okay.
Shayla, did you have a chance to review the minutes?
Hi, everybody. Sorry, I'm late. I did. I was not there, so I had no comments.
Well, except it said you were there, and I was trying to remember if you were there at the beginning, but you had to leave when we. Were you not there at all?
I was not there at all. Sorry. Nope.
Yeah, we gotta move her to absent then. I knew she wasn't there for our subcommittee, but. Okay, I'll move, we accept the minutes as amended.
Seconded by Steve. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
We'll abstain if there's enough people to do that.
Yeah.
I think so. All right. Are we
Okay,
doing this sewer or are we waiting for Matt or how do we wanna?
Yep, so Matt is probably in the air right now, so he will not be joining us.
So I'll comment on the sewer allocation ordinance memorandum if you want. It just, to me, it's good to go.
Mhm.
The changes that are suggested by staff, if you will, by Matt in this are fine with me.
And I actually, go ahead. Good, please.
So you guys, I read this unfortunately last night. It's great, so it's nothing terrible, but I sent a bunch of comments last night to Matt, and as Emily said, he's traveling. My main thought is that I think on the overview, we need to, on that second paragraph, we should sort of just scrap that last sentence, which is not a ton, and be more specific around what this proposal does. And then it'll be a little bit more suggestive to the select board that they encourage us to look at how we allocate based on the changes that have happened in Williston. It's particularly the new town plan, but also the zoning, Taft's Corner zoning changes. And so that we are kind of starting to look at it a little bit differently. And also to really say strongly in that first overview part that we're not worried about capacity and that it should not be a reason to restrict particularly residential growth, because I think that it kind of consistently is this fear that people have that this is something that's gonna, if we keep building houses, that will run out and that's gonna be a real huge burden. And I think we just need to be really explicit about that not being the case here, particularly because actually the residential uses as some of the least of our concerns, and really it's some of those bigger industrial uses that have a heavier burden on the system. So those were my comments to Matt. Again, I unfairly shared them later than he was really able to tackle them. And I know he CC'd you guys, Emily and Melinda, there at the last minute, but I wasn't sure if you were able to look at any of that or consider any of that before this meeting or not. And if the rest of the board does and planning commission doesn't agree with me, then we can skip it. But I think we should look at it. And I think personally that we should look at how we're allocating it, so we don't have this huge gap between what we're selling and what we're using. And we can kind of start to make people really understand what the actual capacity is and where the actual uses are. Help people understand that.
Okay, it's good that we sell more than is then used because we get paid for what we sell.
There, but we don't have to then want to go to Essex and say we need more when we don't actually.
No, and I felt like this document did it first of all by what we're selling, and then it did it by what we're using and made it clear that what we're using is what matters. But I like your idea of having it that more clear in the overview, right in the first or second paragraph. That, by the way, it just a sort of summary level, we don't have any issue, certainly not in the 20 years. By any way we calculate it, we're fine for 20 years. If we're looking at the usage pattern, we're fine much longer than that, but we don't know, but we can't guarantee that. And as far as the different uses, to me, we wind up making mid-year shifts when we run out of a given category, right? The select board can.
Yeah, they do
Change
have
it.
the authority to do that.
So I feel so it's almost really arbitrary that we even have those categories. It's like unnecessarily prescriptive. Yeah, we have 10,000 every year that they can give to something special, which they did one year. But
I think that's kind of my point, Chapin. Like, I would like us to look a little bit more at this like concept of, are we actually doing that? Is it necessary? Should we be doing it by these categories? Should it be different categories? Should it be geographic areas? Should it be?
yeah,
It doesn't. I think I'm just saying I agree with you. Like, it doesn't totally make sense to me that this is the way we do it, and particularly given our zoning and some of our bigger goals, it feels kind of arbitrary. The
Yeah,
way that it's categorized. Again, it's not like stopping anything at the moment, but it doesn't feel like it's adding much.
no, and we certainly do need the reserve, and the 7% recommended reserve is excellent. And we always want to reflect that.
Question.
Mhm.
And this is one of my many questions out of ignorance, and Chapin, it ties on to what you were just now saying. Not knowing the history here, does the 7% number adequately reflect the unknown from potential increases of water due to climate change? Does it take that into account? And I'm just curious if that is even a factor that Public Works or whoever thinks about.
I think that's an industry standard number, right?
Probably industry standard, so Aldrich and Elliott, a reserve capacity anticipates weather fluctuation, seasonal variations in system usage, infiltration and in-migration, so, and other emergencies. So I think it is taking into consideration the weather patterns. When you have more rain, when you have higher intensity storms with flooding and flash flooding, they're taking that into consideration.
That's okay, that's great. I mean, my main driver for the question was I wasn't sure when these figures were recommended by the consultants, and I just wanted to make sure that that was considered.
Yeah, that one was a while ago. Right, they don't come back every year, we did.
Right, they don't come back every year and recommend a different reserve. It's been 7% as long as I remember. That might change in the future. So like to Shayla's point and Steve's questions, the sewer allocation ordinance originated in 1999, so it's nearly 25 years old at its core, which predates the current bylaw, predates a lot of recent trends, both in how our bylaw pushes for development to be designed, and market trends. So I think some of these concerns and ideas we can talk about in the town plan and set some goalposts for how the sewer allocation ordinance is reimagined and re-envisioned to meet our modern day goals.
Thank you.
There is.
I think it could take that into consideration. Yeah, Stephen, I think that's what I'm trying to say is I would love us to sort of have a bigger review of that ordinance and maybe a recommendation around it, taking into consideration all the things Emily said and what you're saying, like, you know, given the storms that we're getting, maybe it's totally fine, but like, let's
ask the question,
refresh it.
We could just put in the letter that we're planning to review it this year. I don't think we even need to ask anything, right? We can just say planning commission.
Again, but you're probably right, Chapin. But I want to make sure that I'm not like the only one with this dying urge to review the sewer allocation.
But to me, it's just overly bureaucratic and overly specific and for what we're doing. And it's not at this point limiting any kind of development. In other words, nobody's coming and we're saying, oh, you can't do that because, you know, the allocation. 1 or 2 times the select board has had to move allocation from one category to another. But if something was being approved by our other, you know, by the DRB and so forth, we weren't then say, oh, but you can't do it because of sewer, right?
Right.
So to me, it's been sort of a non-issue, but it's been good that we've been looking at it carefully. And I'm fine with them adopting that we're okay for another year. And I like your idea of looking at it.
So what we are saying is that we're not saying do away with everything. We are saying to some of the inefficiency that we have here, we want to move it away. And if they are not serving any purpose, might as well don't have it. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe. I think Shayla's just saying, let's look at it.
Yeah.
And we may decide to change it or just to leave it the way it is.
Okay.
And all I'm saying is the green column is the new column and it's the same as the previous year, except for a minor adjustment. And I don't see any problem with what we've been doing. And so doing it for one more year, I don't see as any risk.
With how fast or slow things move, you know, would you ever foresee it being a problem, Emily, that we're behind on this? You know, because I don't want it to become like this behind the scenes bureaucratic red tape that then stops affordable housing, or, you know, it's like, you know, are we in the process of how this gets done and how soon we would need to look at something and so forth? Like, is it
I
a
think
years thing? Is it a fiscal calendar thing? Is it?
I like that it's reviewed every year.
Yeah.
And I feel like we need to take, when the horizon gets to be 20 years or less, we should be taking, you know, because doing something about it's gonna take decades.
Right.
If we
Well,
run out of capacity.
And I asked the question not too long ago in the meeting about, in Matt's mind, should we be thinking about ourselves as our own entity as it comes to water treatment and so forth, like thinking really big if we're thinking about Taft's Corners being built out, and it's perhaps not off the table, I don't think. This arrangement with Essex and things has worked,
Yeah.
but if we're really changing who we are on a map, it might have to look really different.
And I think public awareness of use of water and use of low flow faucets and toilets and things has saved us hugely.
Mhm.
I think the reason why it keeps underperforming in, you know, under using what is sold is because people on average are using less water than they used to. And it looks like even when they are working more from home, that it's still a reasonable trend.
Right, so backing out a little bit here, on this table, what Matt is proposing is dropping the amount of gallons that are allocated to new commercial and new residential to be more in line with the 5-year average. These numbers weren't picked out of the sky entirely, looking at what developments, particularly residential developments, still need to purchase sewer capacity. And there's a great bit of lumpiness in the system where we had several years during the COVID years where purchases were very low. We have a couple major large scale projects, kind of the final frontier of like major subdivision in Williston. So the annex in Taft Corners has purchased the majority of their allocation and needs a little bit more. There's 3 large remaining parcels in the RZD, 2 of which have development proposals, Summerfield and Glazer, where they're anticipated to be on the horizon, and a couple smaller projects. So taking into consideration what projects we know are in the queue or anticipating in the queue, and keeping it in line with, making sure that projects that have their development review and have their permits under zoning are able to move forward and aren't artificially constrained, based on this sewer ordinance. I think Matt might be able to make some tweaks to, you know, the first page to change how that second paragraph reads, and emphasize a little bit more, you know, the planning commission is starting to think about this ordinance more broadly in context of, you know, writing the town plan and thinking about, rather than the year-to-year attachment A, how can that entire ordinance be reimagined to better suit the town's needs and be prepared for growth?
One thing we've talked about in our 2050 planning is not expanding the sewer area, period. Right, that was in the draft, what an example of one of the things. And I strongly support that, and that's a key one. Because if more neighborhoods that are close by can connect, then you can get more density in those neighborhoods. And those are mostly the areas we've zoned not to be dense on purpose because of the will of the people to concentrate growth in the growth center. So that, I mean, that's probably a hot potato. And the other thing probably relevant to you, Steve, is that the association of water usage with sewer usage is loose. People take water and put it in their swimming pools, water their lawns, etc. And as is talked about in this document, some people run a sump pump with seepage in their basement and put it into the sewer. And we bill based on the assumption that what people use is a good measure of what use for water, which is what we measure, is a good measure of what they're using for sewage. And it is a loose link.
Mhm.
Yeah, part of what drove that question, in fact, I wrote a second sort of a follow-up to it that basically says, you know, based on some of the discussion we had at either the last meeting or the one before, we were talking about the fact that some of the wastewater is getting into the sewage system for a variety of reasons. You know, is that enough to be something we have to think about? That's all. I mean, other than let's let's do whatever we can to not have that happen. But is the volume of it enough to, you know, cause concern, I guess?
It is in the map that shows the rain,
Mhm.
the graph that shows the rain against the use, somewhere in there.
Yeah,
That graph lets you see that there's some association, but it's not huge. Which means to me that it's something to keep an eye on, but not something that's out of whack. There was a place that had a water main leak that was not being metered, that was running directly into the sewer. A while ago in the Taft Corners area, I know which building, but I won't say it. And that took years to find and fix.
Wow.
And that was huge.
yeah.
That may be why we had so much usage in there somewhere. And then my own, in the July flood, Bruce Hoare came to my door saying, hey, you guys sump pumping into the sewer? And I said, no. And we investigated the 400 feet of line that run from the road to my house. And we discovered that one of the cleanouts was fractured. And actually, when we dug it out, it looks like it had not been right from day one in 1980 or so. And so Public Works does try to track down if they think there's unusual flow.
Mhm. Yeah, Public Works has done significant effort over the years, finding these leaks, finding illegal sump pumps, finding places where, you know, there's leakage into the stormwater system. And that's kind of one of the invisible layers that I don't think a lot of people in the public, I mean, I wasn't even aware of all the work that Public Works does to find illegal sump pumps in terms of, you know, cameras and lines and using
Yeah.
these smoke tests to find these things. So there's a lot of work that they do to make efficient use of the system. And I think the town plan can help bolster the work of that department and keep supporting those tasks because, you know, you could go find 100,000 GPD possibly, you know, just fixing these inefficiencies rather than having to go purchase it, or maybe more like 50 GPD. I
Interesting.
know what, yeah, in Waterbury was a similar example where the state office complex had a stormwater hole. Every time the Winooski River flooded in the fields, it went into the water treatment plant. And then when they figured it out and fixed it, now they're like, well, now we need more customers for our treatment plant to help with the cost, now that the state's not footing the bill for all those gallons. So similar here.
Thank you.
Is the timing important on this? Do we want to give time? Can we give a month for Matt to respond to Shayla?
The timing is important. Ideally, you will take a vote on this tonight. The main thing you're voting on is these, numbers
The green.
at the
yeah.
end. I think if you wanna allow Matt to take some creative liberties based on what Shayla said to update the first page, and I think the majority of what we're talking about, we're feeding into, you know, a separate conversation. Possibly this coming fiscal year, more likely in the town plan about how do we re-envision and overhaul sewer? How do we have a conscious statement in the town plan that says don't expand the sewer service area, and here's the goals and values that go into allocating what we have and how we should go about finding more, whether that's this plant, our own plant. Most of that's gonna come in from, setting goals in the town plan.
That works for me.
Okay, I'll move, we send the sewer allocation schedule attachment A onto the select board with alterations to the cover letter per Shayla's comments to Matt.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Right?
Opposed? Okay. And now I think we're doing small group stuff, right? Is that what
Yeah, we're gonna do small groups. In person, we have Chapin and Mickey. So what I'm recommending is, Steve and Jill, are you in Melinda's group? Okay, so maybe Steve and Jill, will go into a breakout room with Melinda. And then
Yeah.
I'm proposing Mickey, you and I, let's jump in with Andrew and Shayla and kind of listen in or cross pollinate.
That would be great. Can go home and get on my computer, but I am finding it really hard navigating the SharePoint stuff from home. So yeah, if, are you saying we could
Yeah,
combine
that
yellow
sounds
and
good.
whatever the other one is?
So, hold for a moment, I'm gonna put,
I'll be right back. I won't leave this Zoom link. Just gonna go
okay,
grab some
cool.
water.
Bye.
Snuck in there.
Yeah, I thought you, is it the piano note or
That's
violin note?
a flute or,
Oh, flute.
but it got caught on.
Andrew, I'm gonna let you take the driver's seat, we'll probably give it a moment for Shayla.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Um, yeah, we'll wait for Shayla, but I was kind of thinking just broadly that we would go over what we have. Simon's added some stuff. I've added some stuff since we last met Chapin. And then we can go from there. Emily, we could probably tie in your town facilities and services a bit here. I was just looking at what else is on your list. Hmm.
Oops.
All right. So Shayla, we were just starting to talk. I was thinking about reviewing a little bit of what we have so far. I think it'd be helpful for Emily and Mickey too. And then we could talk topic to topic. I'm open to suggestions on if there's something someone wants to talk about specifically. But I can, let's see, I'll share my screen. Make this a bit bigger, hold on. All right, you see that?
Mhm.
All right, cool. So generally these are our 6 topics there, and I'd say that we've done a fair amount of work on topic 1, 2, actually maybe just 1 through 4, and then 5 and 6 have kind of taken a back burner, but you can see that. And then we also have this, the general, where does this idea go? And I think some of these are really relevant to what we're talking about. So I don't know. Shayla, have you had a chance to read through this?
No, I'm not. I got very stuck on the silly sewer allocation thing in my review time last night.
Okay, no worries.
So if it helps, these things, Shayla, are things that we thought were relevant, but we hadn't decided where they went, what topic they went under.
Mhm.
And so this is like just bullets of reminders of things to try to figure out what to do with them.
I see, but we're not sure which one of our categories they fall in.
Yeah.
Correct.
The whole philosophy being that we can start at the bottom level with that specific ideas and then clump them and jump up a conceptual level.
Yeah. So the community building and engagement idea, I think, also connects to what Emily's group is doing.
Right.
I saw that in their document they have stuff about that, and I think there are a number of ways we can talk about that. We can talk about it in terms of land use. In the ARZD, Chapin and I talked a lot about our kind of farm stand slash farms that are diversifying their business model by doing events or having some sort of community based food trucks, that sort of thing. And so questions about do we want to allow more of that? Do we want to help support those businesses? Is there a way that we can support those businesses?
Does
I think-
ISHA like in the well, this is an RZD, but in the ag rural, does ISHA need he doesn't have any special permitting, right? He just gets like for his farmers market.
He does have some special permitting.
Oh, he does.
Some of what he does is exempted ag, some of what he does is an accessory on farm business. And then some is, because the historic barn is permitted as a banquet facility, they can have the event facility.
But they have to get permission for specific events if there's alcohol served and things like that.
Right, I think that comes out of DLC law, so the select board acts as the liquor control board for catering events. I'm not sure if they also have to get special event permits. I don't think they do because they're permitted as a event facility.
Yeah.
For things that are associated in the barn or directly adjacent to the historic barn, but it's only because that barn's a listed structure. So there's a lot of other properties in the ag rural where they can't do anything because they're not in listed ag historic structure.
I see. So you can't build a barn like that today and do the same thing.
Right, and that was extremely controversial
Somebody was trying to.
on South Road.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and didn't just build a barn, but tried to build an authentic historic barn based on pieces.
Right.
It's very nice too, if you've been there.
And that sort of brings up the question, I think, and part of this conversation is, you know, if that use is compatible with what we want in the ARZD. And I think that there are a lot of neighbors that might not prefer if the farm next to them was having weddings or late night events or that sort of thing. And so it's weighing that, you know, the community value versus what we're envisioning in the ARZD. And, you know, if every farm is doing this, what does that mean?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree with you, Andrew. And I like as a neighbor of Isham, I mean, they're great and it's not a problem for us at all. But if we lived, we don't, our house is still very far, like miles wise from the burn. So it's not loud. Like we can hear it, but it's not noisy.
Mhm.
And if you live right next to it, it would be. But I don't know that historic designation should be. That seems like
Yes,
that seems like not the right reason. That's the allowable use. Since that's not the issue. The issue is noise, mainly traffic, I guess, to some degree.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Right? Like if the nuisance issues are noise and traffic, then your historic designation is not really relevant.
I agree.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not saying historic designation is not important. It's just not relevant to whether or not you should be able to have weddings. Or
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
So
which kind of goes to noise ordinance, like,
Right.
you know, is that policy functional for what Williston is dealing with in 2024 to 2050? And then how is it enforced? Because all these special event permits come down to, you know, the applicant acting in good faith and then having an effective enforcement mechanism. And typically the police department doesn't respond to noise complaints, given everything else that's on the list, so.
And another one is the gun club.
Mhm.
Mhm.
You know, to me, there's 100 possible uses in a rural area that, and in a rural area, people are not used to being regulated strongly. You know, if somebody has 10 acres and they invite their friends to come and camp on their land and enjoy an anniversary party or something, is that allowed? What if they did it as a regular thing with people that weren't their family or their person, you know? To me, there's a lot
do
of
that.
gray area.
People do that in our area,
Mhm.
There's a lot of gray area there.
which is again fine with me, but I think it's definitely a thing.
You know, I think the select board special event ordinance, it's like a pretty low bar of like 40 people gathering and you need a special event permit. It's like, yeah, how many 4th of July
Parties.
parties,
After parties, yeah.
after parties and family
Before.
Thanksgivings trip that threshold.
Emily, you just don't count.
Just go somewhere else on the holidays. It's not my ordinance to enforce.
Sorry, this was maybe we're getting in a rabbit hole, but I mean, I do really think that the farmers market and the theater stuff that they're doing and that type of community, you know, they do that again, they in this case is in my very personal experience with Isham, so they do like the October Farm Festival, they do the farmers market, they have the theater events, like all of that to me in terms of community and community building is amazing and really important, which is actually very different than the parties and the banquets and the weddings, which I'm also fine with, but is a very separate thing. That is a private event versus something like the farmers market or the theater event or the October fair. So I do also think that there's, like, when we say event, I think it's different to have a late night band with a liquor license versus a farmer's market.
Mhm.
No, I think you're making a really good point about private versus public. To me, the big part there is public versus
Yeah,
private.
that's right, Chapin, thank you.
And the extent of how accessible the public is, like, if a family brown bags a dinner to listen to the music and have kids run around the field, they can do that at the Isham, whereas like, you know, if you go to Shelburne Museum for Music, like you have to buy their food and alcohol.
Totally.
Mhm.
I've thought about crashing some of the weddings. I mean, just to dance, you know. Wouldn't need any food. Right, that is right. That's what the difference is.
Yeah.
And maybe that's where it's easier to intervene, is on that level versus like dealing with the noise ordinance and this and that, and having it really be about.
At,
'Cause the
at
gun
the
club
risk,
thing, is that public?
it's what, public?
The gun club?
I think it's like quasi-public, like where you become a member.
You have to be a member to shoot, or a guest of a member. I would say that's private.
You need to remember me, there's a private club already.
It's like some of the things that Isham, like you have to buy theater tickets, and if you wait, maybe it's sold out at the door.
Right, the
So-
theater might not be a great example because that's more of a,
To me, if it sells out, that's not saying that it becomes private. It just means that they have to
You're too
manage.
late.
The manage that
manage the
happening.
size, right?
North Country Sportsman Club, open to the public, membership available.
Hmm.
And you can do corporate events and private parties there.
So, I'm wondering if, at the risk of getting specific, if what we're talking about with events and event facilities is something that somebody should be able to apply for, and once they are approved, then they have rules they have to operate within, but they don't have to come back for each event. Now, I know the gun club is in negotiation with the select board, has extremely specific rules they have to follow. But they affect people miles away. You can hear them in half a town. And the lead problem isn't as a secondary problem, the lead in the streams.
I think the
So,
enforcement thing is the issue, Emily. Like, I agree with you, Chapin, that you should be able to come and, you know, I mean, let's say farm. Well, I mean, does a farm stand is not a thing that you need a permit for, right? No.
unless you have a trailer serving, food. Right, there's a point at which,
Right, so I think if you were to have a farm stand, whether it be a cooler under an umbrella or something like a little shed. Where you're selling products that are primarily produced on your property, you're okay. If it's like prepared foods and you're kind of traipsing into food truck world.
like what they've done on North Williston Road, they have a permit for that, right?
Right, yep, they have a permit for that, and we expanded the bylaw to allow food trucks as accessory to any non-residential parking lot. And it's an administrative permit, whereas before, you would have to go to the
Right, I
development.
remember that.
review board,
Right,
in the
right, right.
building. Yeah.
So that's a good thing.
Mhm.
Totally a good thing. Sorry, I was just trying to think of I mean, because the other one that to me is cool for, you know, community members is that fall festival thing they do. Which is very different than a farmer's market. But I guess sort of the encouragement of that. somehow, that kind of public. Again, I
Yes.
mean, and I don't know how, Andrew, we weave this in, but like it aligns with the idea that we talked about when the last time I came talk with you and Chapin around like using the ARZD and having everyone in Williston have access to that space. And this is instead of just the like paths or the hiking trails,
Right.
the like community side of that.
Mhm.
I mean, I can tell you guys, my lambs, they have a lot of photos. They get a lot of photos taken of them. They're on the Isham hiking trail and they're famous every year.
So
I don't know what they get fed. I don't want to know.
some of this is the second bullet in the second open bullet in the section above where it said, should we consider allowing more commercial uses in historic and non-historic agricultural barns and foster community inclusiveness, but do not harm the living conditions of neighboring residents.
Mhm.
And when we talk about having rules for that, to me, it's how is parking managed? How is noise managed?
Mhm.
Do you know when you need to get a special permit because you're going to serve alcohol or something?
Mhm. Right, so these elements that are, you know, better managed through an ordinance and less through zoning, so zoning you can, and I think the benefit of the ISHM is that parking lot by the barn isn't shining lights into anybody's windows next door. So you can do some extent in site design, but then there's this whole like code enforcement side of it that's really important for these special activities. And it's almost like what the community preference survey would be. It's like, are you okay with a little bit of noise and a little bit traffic if it's for, you know, this publicly accessible event versus a private event, and like find where some of those triggers and thresholds are.
So Andrew, do you want to keep reviewing or do you want to direct us where we should
Yeah,
pay
sorry,
attention?
totally.
No,
No,
all
I'm
of this is
terrible
good.
at actually constructively contributing. That's what Andrew's learning about me.
I think it's all really good, and this is the conversation we've been having, and I think it is really good to talk about. We can read through. I'm kind of wondering what you guys think makes sense. We can scroll through and read what we have, and then if you have additional thoughts or new thoughts, we can add to that.
I would be in favor of reviewing the topics one by one and sort of say, where do we think we stand on each one? You said the first four, we have some done.
Mhm. Yeah, let's do that.
So we
I
have
did
talked
want
a
to,
lot.
just before I forget to say it, I think that's a good idea. Just before I forget to say it, I did read through a bunch of the sheets from the groups again. And I think we did also talk last time about community gardens, but that actually came up a number of times.
Yes.
And so I do want to just make sure, because I think we were just talking about that one spot, Chapin. But I think what I want to make sure we say somewhere is like more broadly that we should make.
At a previous meeting, we went over several spots.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Sorry, I'm trying to remember. I just saw that and I thought, oh, we should really make sure that is.
Yes.
Because that's not a super hard thing to accomplish. All right, sorry.
And we, somewhere we talked about food equity too, about not just individuals having a community garden, but actually community agriculture. In other words, you have a garden that's supplying the food shelf.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought we captured that, Andrew. Is that somewhere there?
I believe so. Yes, I believe it's down in
okay,
our fourth topic area. I just pass it. No. Let's see. I don't know if I wrote down specifically.
No, that one just says community garden space.
I'll just write it here and then we can go back and,
Yeah. And also it can go to the schools. We have a new person coordinating farm to table for the schools.
very cool.
And she's very interested in finding more ways to get local food direct to the schools. Yeah, it's Jackie Ward, if you want to put a name in it.
That would be, yeah.
Ward, W-A-R-D, yeah.
So let's go back up. For land use, I think we have a good start going. We talk about sprawl specifically, some open space development, habitat and forest block, protecting those through clustered development. We have that adaptive reuse of historic barns conversation, agricultural uses and agricultural adjacent uses. Talked a little bit about active recreation, some indoor, larger
Yeah.
scale stuff.
Yeah, we were wondering if a horse arena would even be allowed in the ag rural zone, because that's not really an agriculture, it's more of a commercial or a recreation, I should say, activity.
And RCD too,
Mhm.
Glazer is, which like totally, I didn't even
Yeah,
process that during all that review.
Right.
Technically, the arena is like an existing nonconformity.
Oh, really?
Mhm.
oh, yeah.
Because it's not agricultural. It's
No,
recreation,
it's recreational, really.
right?
So somewhere that we value, this was Chapin's point,
Yes,
values heavily, but you can't
It's
really
not
do that
allowed. Well,
easily.
I mean, Adams is the same, right? Like
yeah.
hilariously, everybody loves that place and it's totally not not allowed.
Yeah.
Well, and that really is my point, is we need to make it so that those things are allowable somehow.
Because that's another great, I mean, like that's not a farmer's market or an event space, but it is still a space where a lot of people
Yeah, and
go.
on trucking Tuesdays, there's quite a
That's
bit of
right,
crowd.
that's right, that's right.
Mhm. So we have a little bit of that separated out here, and I think I can probably put it up so it's all together. We did have a conversation about solar as a land use,
Mhm.
and this is one that I added in, just was
Yeah,
talking about it in the office and thought it might be relevant. We have some conversations about farmers housing, temporary housing for seasonal workers.
Do
We
we
just
have
had-
a bunch of that, Andrew?
as far as I know, there are, I know the Cyples have some seasonal workers. We were just at the DRB with them. I believe there are others, but I
Yeah.
don't know specifically.
here's my name problem on Old Stage Road past Adams on the right down there, Marquee something with ducks and so forth, and they have a trailer in the backyard and have seasonal help, even though they are a backyard farm.
The 2 acre farm thing?
Yeah, or is that what they call it?
Maybe,
I didn't know they called it that, but they
like
might,
near Mountain View and
yes, past Mountain View.
in North Williston.
On the right, past Adams, Orchard on the right. They raise ducks and chickens and, quite an amazing amount of stuff on a small space.
Mhm.
But anyway, there is the need for farmer housing, and the Cyples case brings out all sorts of interesting points, like they put their land in through the land trust into conserved, which means they have to then go through a rigmarole if they're gonna carve out a piece of that land to be the site of a housing for a farm worker.
Yeah, I from conversations with another person in town too, I think that sometimes this goes under the radar and is done informally, and you know,
No,
because
it's
it's
almost always is.
right, it's
I mean,
because
it's a
it's
huge health
temporary,
problem.
right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think it's yeah, it's a broader problem, but
I mean, and I don't know, it's too much to tackle in this one bullet, but the other, I mean, we also had that issue of the workers sleeping in that
In
hotel,
hotels.
Yeah,
the hotel they were building, they were sleeping next door, I mean, whatever, it was a mess.
mhm.
right, like, is it better to have a provision for, you know, temporary employee housing? It's like, would it have been terrible if there was, like, instead of a job trailer, it's like a
Exactly.
temporary employee housing? It's like,
Right.
okay, fine, you need a place for your employees, give them at least a real bathroom and shower and kitchenette. And farm worker housing, it's like, do we want to expand our allowances for using RV for temporary housing? Or allowing, I know a lot of this runs into, walls with state water and wastewater. So if you were to have like temporary farm worker housing, like, I'm not sure if, you know, composting toilets are able to get, or like a latrine or a privy set up for bathroom facilities, like if that can get a water wastewater permit, so. And then there's a whole equity question of like, do you want people living in substandard housing that's intended for recreational living and not permanent living? And like, where do you draw that line?
Do we say though, what does it mean by temporary? Is it like 3 months thing or is it like 1 year thing? Because it's.
That's a
also
really good point.
Or else they will drag on forever.
I
then they
think,
will just
I
say
think temporary by definition has to be,
No more than 6 months.
6 months comes to mind.
Yeah,
Right,
I mean, what you're thinking, I mean, what I'm thinking of are construction jobs
Yeah,
Mhm.
and like, I mean. We don't have dairy. Dairy is really the main ag situation where we have
and even the.
primarily migrant farm workers living in substandard housing, right? Like that's and we don't have much of that at all. Do you have any dairy farms?
I think Whitcomb's was the last, right?
Johnson,
Oh, yeah. Although Johnson's not doing dairy, they're doing beef. Right? They're not milking.
the one down the road.
Yeah,
I guess, I don't know, I
think-
think cows.
I think
don't
Johnson,
know.
I think Johnson is just raising, well, I could be wrong. It could be they're still doing milking. I should know.
We should
Okay.
both know.
Regardless, I don't think permanent migrant or temporary workers are issue. It is truly, Mickey, to your question, I think it's mainly temporary in Williston. And
Yeah.
while I would love to solve this for the state, we only have to solve it for Williston. So I do think it can be thought of as like 6 months or less. And I think that your question around substandard housing is really critical. And it needs to be cheaper and easier, or we will get what we have right now, which is if it's not cheaper and easier, then people just won't. They'll just like stash human beings in places where they should not be living at all.
Yeah.
So I think that's the balance is like, you know,
Let's have something that allows temporary, parenthesis, 6 months, question mark, housing for farm and construction workers. And it would be a permit that you apply for, because it would expire. And then if there was some reason like it needed to go on longer, or you needed to do it again next year, you would have to reapply for the permit. It's like an event permit. That would, to me, that would help a lot with the substandard living thing, because if it was not maintained well or not done well, then the town has a choice not to renew the permit another time.
And I
You know
think
what I
Emily,
mean?
they just have to comply with whatever the state's wastewater. You know, it can't be,
Yes.
and you say that, and then whatever they allow, if they allow composting toilets, fine, and if they don't, then too bad, can't have those.
I also have another question though, since we are talking about that kind of stuff. Do we foresee though in the future, people live in farm for like what they do it in Texas, or where people go there for ranch experience that?
I think that's what Shayla was saying, is because we don't have much dairy farming, we don't have much of that situation.
Yeah.
Are you talking about tourism, Mickey? Like
Yes,
tourism?
yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. The
I'm talking about
tourism,
tourism, right?
yeah.
Do we think to foresee such thing, or do we have to do anything about it? But definitely
Mickey,
will
they come
happen.
here for their weddings. That's the wedding part. All those Connecticut
That's
people
another-
coming for their weddings.
And they get to work on the farm for a day. That's a
Sorry,
good point.
I actually don't know the answer to that.
I don't either.
I haven't heard of it, but
To me, it falls into the category of bed and breakfast, or, you know, yeah.
well,
Because if you
short-term
talk about
rentals.
farm to table and, this kind of experience, I'm sure there will be a day people want to just come here and do that kind of stuff.
Isham's, until Mike and Helen moved back in, Isham's were doing bed and breakfast in their farm, and part of the charm of living there was you're living on a farm in an old farmhouse. So I absolutely see the staying part, and I think it can be covered under that. In terms of having a permit to work on the farm, I don't know, and I don't think we have to worry about it, but I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay. So moving forward to our second topic is conservation areas. Once again, have a pretty good list going. Sort of general kind of goals there. I think Simon put this in prior to a couple weeks ago now. But here are some general goals. I think they're consistent with the old plan, and also with some of the stuff that the Conservation Commission's been working on.
I'm not sure where we put the ground mounted solar discussion, but that is relevant here, Andrew.
Yeah, so we mentioned that in land use.
Yeah, I wonder if it should be here instead. It is a land use, but to me, the issue is fencing and brush hogging natural areas that would otherwise be wildlife corridors, and
Fencing and brush hogging for solar.
solar orchards or solar, yeah.
How do you spell brush hogging? 2 words?
That's it. Yeah, they do want you to do it as 2 words, but I don't, but if you're a Vermonter, it's 1 word. And fencing for solar.
Solar arrays.
We have discussed before cutting down trees for solar and discovered we could not regulate that. Right, the CCRPC informed us that you can't tell people what they can do with their land in terms of cutting down trees if it's their land.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's gonna come, because Melinda's group is folding energy plan in to the town plan.
Yeah,
So I think it does play into both land use and energy plan.
Right.
Just, yeah. So there's 25 solar trackers in the field behind the town hall. No fence. Wildlife uses that. Yeah, I put trail cameras out there and got pictures of everything from bears to coyotes to everything's happening back there. A lot of coyotes and foxes. Then you take something like the array that's behind the used car place on Mountain View Road,
Mhm.
and you wind up with a fence that goes for miles, it seems, over a very large area that excludes the movement of animals.
Mhm.
And you wind up mowing or brush hogging in there using fossil fuels to keep down the grass so you can have solar. And it seems to me we should prioritize leaving the land. A lot of people with ground-mounted solar have sheep. You pretty much can't have cattle or horses because they try to rub on whatever you have and disturb it. But you can have sheep, and some people manage with goats. And you can just have it open like in the field behind the town hall. In that case, it can be open in particular because it's solar trackers where the electronics are 9 feet off the ground. It's pole mounted,
Mhm.
not ground mounted, but you can have ground mounted and have sheep. And then the PUC rules about when you have to fence have to do with the safety of the electronics or is everything in conduit or not?
Mhm.
And is it a height that a person could walk in and touch something and get shocked?
Okay.
I don't have the answers. I'm just glad if we could steer, we want more solar
Mhm.
and we don't want it to interfere with our wildlife corridors and our other environmental goals.
Mhm.
Not interfering with wildlife and our other environmental goals, like not burning fossil fuels. I suppose you could brush hog them with electric brush hoggers. So I shouldn't necessarily say brush hogging is bad per se.
Fair point. Okay.
I'm talking and I'm muted.
What?
I'm
Oh,
sorry,
you're
I was
muted.
just having a conversation with myself over here. I was just muted. Once we're done with that, though, I did have a question about the recreation and parks. Are we not the trails people? Like, is there a team that has trails specifically?
It's a good question. I think that we are
I think you
trails.
guys are trails.
Yeah.
Okay, then we have to have the first one be we got to name the silly thing between the village and the task corners, that trail.
Well, that's a multi-use path.
Yeah, that's not a trail.
That's Matt's group, but write it here
Okay.
anyway.
That's fine.
Write it here
Great.
anyway.
That was my question. Perfect. Okay, then you can ignore that. Then, but relatedly, the last bullet says the town has permanent trails across private land that's secured through trail easements. There's also a lot of easements that the town has where we don't have trails built. Because
Mhm.
I don't know, there's no money. I'm not sure I'm guessing money, right, Emily?
Pretty much. Money, and often the trails are through constrained areas.
Yeah, we're not connected to anything else.
Mhm.
Like we've been given a trail easement, but it just leads to across one person's property. So there's no connectivity.
Is there an analysis of that?
I don't think so.
No, I remember, I think years ago, when Brad was planning tech, he did some accounting work with Melinda on, trail easements that we had from older subdivisions. So I think there could be more work around what easements do we have? Of the easements, what are the priority to actually start building? And then what are the easements that are the priority to get? So if we connect this one property, then it makes sense to, build something.
Exactly.
So I was talking to
I would
somebody on the
love to see that.
Yeah. I was talking to someone on the Conservation Commission, and the Conservation Commission's done a lot of work on this. They may have it ready to go. I know they have their list of priority parcels,
Yeah.
and then I think they have something not quite as organized about trails.
Mhm.
Do we wanted to have trees in the other side of the town where there's a lot of empty land and that make it whatever instead of in the residential area or existing area where you will have a difficulties of even having it
We got positive feedback on all the trails
that we have.
from all of our public input.
Mm.
People say they love the trails and they want more. And they want to be able to ride their horses on more of them and take their dogs on more of them.
But do we intended to connect all of them? Is that what we envision in the future? Or somehow or other?
You know, there is a desire for connectivity. Conservation Commission, wants Mud Pond to be connected to up to Sucker Brook through the
Mhm.
whatever and connected the other way to the I'm terrible about remembering the names of things. But I don't think if there's this idea that you would travel around town on trails, that is more for rec paths. That's more for paved paths, for getting people around.
Mhm.
The idea of having a connected trail system for hiking is on a small scale, yes, we want to connect this area to that area, but on a large scale, I don't think there's been a call for that.
Right, so I think that could be more clearly defined.
Can you see, I'm
Yeah,
trying to
we
share
saw
the
your-
official, can you see the official map right now?
Yes.
Yep.
So, Mickey, this map, the green has our country parks and conservation areas. And we have in brown dashed lines, the desired trails, and then brown solid lines are the existing trails. So like Sucker Brook is here along 2-way. You can see we've got an existing trail there that comes over to 5 Tree. But then we have multiple desired trails.
But Andrew, are those with easements or no easements?
So that is a good question that I don't know the answer to. I don't think we have something that has another layer there that highlights the easements we have versus don't have. And there are a lot of parcels on that map that are crossed. I fully recognize that.
I think that's what, and maybe it is. Ooh, let me start that over. I think that's what I want is like to eventually be able to have a map where you can say like, look, we've got everything except this one, or like, oh wow, we've got everything here now. I'm working towards it for the last 15 years. But
Mhm.
whoa, it would cost millions of dollars because there's a brook in the middle of it versus like this one's gonna be easy.
We should get help from conservation.
Absolutely. Can we get them to give us their ideas?
Yeah.
Because they have like
bet we could
3
talk
of
to
our
the
topics,
conservation
right?
Planner.
Mhm.
You're talking to the right person.
Yeah, and this
But
would come
Andrew, do you
off
want to like
like-
bring the document to them? Sorry, maybe you're already doing this.
So this is something we're talking about is bringing all of these groups are working on things that are relevant to different committees. This specifically to conservation, and I think we've talked a little bit about how we'd like to do that, whether we want to bring them a you know, a more polished version of this document we're working on. Or maybe if we wanted some conservation commission members to actually join you and Chapin in a meeting and have a conversation that's a little bit smaller. Something we're discussing. We don't open to suggestions, I suppose.
I don't care. I
Yeah, I've
just
been
don't want to
basically
miss their
feeding the hack
ideas.
stuff. Is pretty much what the hack's been talking about. I literally had the same conversation with them and then had the same conversation with Mickey and Megan last week, just organically, so I've been kind of fueling in what they say. As the intermediary, but will have that, you know, when there's a first draft, maybe bring it, have a joint meeting. A more formal overview at the end.
Yeah, I would leave it to you guys to decide the best way. I just don't want to.
Yeah, but we need
Yeah,
to do
miss their
some
stuff.
homework though, right? Or else it will be more of like or I don't know. More of a desire than something that we could actually do.
Well, I think a question you're raising, and it looks like that thought went into a lot of those
Yeah.
dotted lines, is how much of a priority is it to connect our existing primitive trails?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good point. Yeah, how much of a push should we make to connect existing primitive trails?
I mean, versus making sure that they exist in all different areas.
Mm,
You know, like what's the,
Yes,
I mean, it would be really cool if you could say like, oh my gosh, you can hike from Heinsberg to Lincoln, where it would be South Burlington, you know, and like you can go all on in primitive trails, but like that's not what most people are doing. Most people are going for half an hour,
yeah,
45 minutes, and to like making sure that everybody has close sorry. The question I have is making sure that everybody has close access versus connectivity.
It
With the
sounds like this
eventual
is
goal of
gonna become the
connectivity.
formula for like a GIS analysis or
yeah.
an RFP for a trail analysis study of like, here's the criteria that would then go into the algorithm basically for figuring out what's the number one priority, taking into consideration.
So connecting
things.
trails goes in our 7th area. Is that the one that's neighboring towns?
Mhm.
Maybe, yeah,
That one looks like it's got the fewest ideas in it.
it does. Yes, and I think we're double dipping. I think Matt's group has that as well, which might not be necessary.
Oh,
But I think if you can write
neighboring
it and
towns.
then feed it over to Matt, cause some of Matt's stuff is like, you know, transportation and economy.
Mhm.
For
So I guess-
reference, VAST, the
Mhm.
Vermont Snowmobile Club stuff, really worked on that, getting rights of way and connecting trails across towns for miles and miles. With the warm winters we've been having, in Williston at least, the snowmobile riding opportunities are way down.
Mhm.
But hiking trail connections, probably people who were part of VAST know how to do this.
Right.
Mhm.
We joked growing up in Sharon, that was the closest highway.
So Melinda just messaged me that their group is ready to come back on in.
Okay.
Where's my mouse?
I have one to put into watershed health if we don't already have it.
Okay.
I just,
There.
we got field mowing there, which relates to it. I just think we need to stop Public Works from mowing wetlands. Period. And I don't know what to put here, but that's really important for water quality.
Are you specifically referring to a field or
The two that
Town Hall Meadow?
the 3 that I'm aware of where they mow wetlands, or 4 that I can name. The Town Hall Meadow behind the town hall is about 60% wetland, and the Conservation Commission has asked them to stop mowing the wetland parts of it, and they refused. That was 6 years ago or so. The field behind Allenbrook School, where the rec path runs back behind Allenbrook, that gets into wetland and it gets brush hogged every year. There's wetland parts of the small field between the rec path and the end of Lambert Lane in the village. And there's the areas around the disc golf course there too. So I just feel like the town should have a policy, we do not mow wetlands, period, you know, that it's part of our watershed management. Hi, Melinda. I can't see her, but I'm sure her ears are ringing.
Hi.
Have you heard this before?
Yeah.
Chapin, I just want to say one of your wonderful attributes is your consistency.
Is what?
You're consistent. You
Oh,
are
yeah.
very consistent. Important.
Are you guys gonna share?
We can. Did we want to go through each group?
Mhm.
Our group decided to tackle the education and childcare piece. It was something we hadn't really discussed yet, other than folks kind of putting stuff into the draft file. So talked about what we might talk to the school system about, and questions we had, data we wanted to track down, that sort of thing. We had a lot of questions, I guess. That's kind of the key takeaway from that section. Other groups?
I can talk about we did a long conversation about what is allowable in the agricultural rural zone around, like, you know, the farmers markets, or even like riding arenas, and sort of what how to work on that without creating a lot of disruption, and noise problems and traffic problems. And sort of where we landed was probably something involving whether or not something is public being an important definer. So like having lots of private weddings is different than having public events like a farmer's market or a fall festival or a food truck night where anybody can come. And that's an important kind of community building piece that is a way for people to access the ag zone that isn't just hiking or biking. And similar, and how many of those opportunities that exist now are either non-conforming, or have kind of interesting ways of getting not around the rules, but, you know, are exceptions to the rule, like Isham's because of their historic barn, Adams because they've been there forever. I don't know how Glazers got their arena, but Glazers have a riding arena, et cetera, and how those things are treasured, but they're not don't really conform. You can't replicate them newly at this point. So we want to kind of work on that piece.
We also had a conversation about, well, it turned into a general conversation about temporary housing for workers. Started off as a conversation about farm workers living, you know, under 6 months, or for seasonal work on a farm in Williston, and then into a broader conversation about construction work and just a problem that we've been seeing in town in the planning office, and just there was general agreement that it's something that we want to think about, and is that we do see as a problem. And then what else did we talk about?
And just to be clear, we see it as like, we want to allow for something that is available to live in, that is better than kind of what might be happening, which is a little bit either under the radar or people not complying with any rules because they're too hard to comply with or whatever.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And then the last
Just
large
want to be clear, we're not
conversation-
trying to bar temporary workers.
Yes, no.
No more temporary workers.
And then we talked about trail connectivity and talked a bit about trail easements. And Melinda, you might be able to speak to this, but we were talking about you and Brad's work when he was planning tech about trail easements, and trail planning for the town. And I think the really interesting point that Shayla made is comparing trail connections versus locations of trails and accessibility to all areas of town. So there's a lot there, but it's as a part of what we're talking about. So
Yeah, just like speaking a little to that, I guess when I first started working for Williston, I was conservation planner for a bunch of years and was kind of spent some time going through these old trail easements and to find out that many of these trail easements that have been secured by the town as part of development agreements were kind of it seemed like the landowners had second thoughts about them and felt that they were pressured into giving them and were, I don't know, kind of resentful about then having this encumbrance. So I don't know, might just be something to think about for the future. Just how to do it in a more thoughtful way or a more planned out way, because, I think that the practice used to be whenever there's development on a parcel, the town gets a trail easement. Didn't really matter where it was or whether it really connected to anything, but it was just practice, and that I don't think has entirely served the town well. But anyway.
Melinda, what about having a oh my gosh, what's the name of our official map? What about having like an official map version of what we would want so that people could see why in a different way? And it's not like just like random, you're paying a price. This is the town's plan. This is why it's thought out. Your property is here because of X, Y, Z. And if you want to do this, then we're going to ask for this for those reasons. So that it's feels less arbitrary. It would still might not deal with all the resentment, but at least it would have more of a thoughtful layout, and it might get us other things when we want other things. Instead of asking for a trail easement we're never going to use and we'll never connect to anything helpful, we could maybe ask them to do something different that would be more useful.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly the way that, ideally that the process would happen, less ad hoc.
I still want to see the map of what we have though. So we
Yep.
resentment or no resentment.
I think there's a map in the conference room, I think, of the trail easements. It might be missing some of the more recent ones. It is missing the more recent ones, but
I'll look at
Oh,
it.
yeah, the trail easements are on this map.
Of
Anything-
course. Never thought of something in trails that Melinda hasn't already done. I
That
love
was
that.
before me.
Well, I love that though. We should totally look at that then and then see if how far off that is from what we would think of. And maybe, Andrew, an activity for the town plan is to get a official map. I'm sure we can't call it an official map, but whatever,
Well,
an official
we-
map type thing for
We
trails.
have trails and trails desired on the official map, but what I think you're suggesting adding is which ones have easements and which ones don't.
Yeah. Sorry. Thank you, Chief. And then highlighting the ones where it's like, these are the places where
Yeah.
we should ask for that when there's an opportunity.
Well, anything else folks want to report out on? Or would someone want to make a motion to adjourn? I know this has been a long day.
I would be interested in a really quick tour, maybe by Andrew, of how to get around when I go and try to open something in the whatever it's called.
SharePoint sucks. Yep.
Stuff. Sometimes my computer sits there for 15 minutes and never anything happens. Other times I just click again and something shows up. And I think in the background, it was maybe downloading tons of data that was part of what I was trying to open, rather than just opening a window to it. And I just wondered if you could briefly show us where we should be getting around.
So I think that I can definitely show you the spreadsheet I've been working on.
Yeah,
And I think
because I
too,
can't find that spreadsheet.
Okay. So I guess what I would say is that Emily might be the better person to talk you through actually accessing SharePoint as a site. But
And this goes for everybody, and like no judgment, because I've struggled with it too. SharePoint's not intuitive. Even sometimes when I try to log into SharePoint with my town credentials, I like sign in and then it spits me back into the sign in page again. And it's like I have to close that tab and begin again. So I think it does have some bugs. We can work through that. In terms of the survey results, we're getting pretty close with North Star, where you'll have like a nice high level analysis. Andrew's been working really hard on some incredible graphs that
Yes.
help paint the picture of like, here's all these responses that we got and here's what it means.
So is
you won't
your
have to open
spreadsheet
the
supposed to be
extension.
accessible?
it's
Yes.
it's in the folder with all of our groups folders.
I got into it once and then I couldn't find it again.
Are you on a desktop or laptop at home?
Yes.
Desktop or laptop, both?
It's a laptop, but it's a laptop that's running Microsoft Windows, whatever the current one is, and I do have Office 360 or whatever it is.
Okay, yeah, bring your laptop in, and I can help you, because there's ways where you can set up some hot links.
Yeah, so you can see in here we have our
You slide up our
Oh, yeah.
thing over.
our groups. And you might be, when you log in, you might be in this.
Yes,
view
I
where
come
you're
in
within a
here.
folder.
Yes.
And then you can click back out here to the general task forces folder.
Yeah.
And this opens up the survey document. And
is it possible that I don't even see that?
You might have to get to it through two different links. So this folder, the town plan task forces, where you can see all the team subfolders.
Yes.
Everyone has view only access to that. You only have edit access to your
Right, but I could
subfolder.
swear that I couldn't see that bottom thing.
Yeah,
I'll have to go home and check again.
yeah, we can take a look if you want to stop by. I think that's a good idea.
mhm.
Okay.
It is a lot of information in that survey response Excel, and there's a lot of sheets as well.
We talked last time about maybe including the postcards from the future data. Is that somewhere?
It's not there, but it will be in the report. I think we only got about like 40 or 50, so,
Okay.
yeah. Before we adjourn, I do wanna let you know that I checked, Sarah Mason has the unofficial results up. There were no contested select board seats, so those passed, but the 3 budget items failed. So the town budget, the parking lot bond, and the Old Break Church fire suppression all failed.
Thanks.
By how much, Emily?
The town budget failed by 209 votes, the Old Brick Church fire suppression by 261, and the parking lot bond by 471.
So the rumors are true that nobody want to pay more money,
Guess so.
Yeah, I
especially
mean,
when the
saying how I felt a little uninspired voting for more paved parking, but you know, it's
Uh,
it is needed, you know.
I'm gonna admit that I did not vote for the parking because it didn't include
Okay.
solar.
That's when I was sitting there going, J-Pin, you were in my head.
It's like also because there were problems with the design and I really wanted to see it thought through better,
Yeah, fair.
but
Emily, what about the
But, you know.
town, just the budget?
The main town budget failed as well.
Mm,
So each one had about 2,800 votes. The parking lot got the most votes by a handful. So about 2,800 people voted on the budget items.
I'd love to say that makes sense, but
No. Okay.
Huh.
but what were the numbers on the main budget itself?
1494 in favor, or no, 1494 against and 1285 for it,
so it's.
with a difference of
So that's
209.
Yeah,
wow,
Yeah.
okay then. Well, on that note, if we're still looking for a motion, I will motion, local motion.
All right.
I want to say one comment on that, which is, I didn't want to say this in public, and now we're recording this, but here's the thing, on the school budget, there's a lot of spillover on the town budget from the school budget problem. The 20% increase sort of statewide idea. On the school budget, if you are not income sensitive, then you're talking about trading off another vacation or another boat or another vehicle with paying your 20% increase on your taxes. If you are income sensitive, then you're not getting a 20% increase. And it just seems like I would really like to know where people really stand, not on what their emotional reaction is. Because yes, taxes are hard. It's not saying it's not a hardship for somebody. But if it's somewhere up to $130,000 a year or something that you can earn and still get some income sensitivity relief on the school taxes. And so it really startles me that it's like people don't realize that they're income sensitive, or maybe something else is going on.
I think there's something even more fundamental than that, Chapin, and that is that I honestly think that all the various bodies involved in this process have frankly done a poor job of getting people to actually understand what's going on. I really do. I think there were so many moving parts in this thing, and the numbers are so large. I mean, the delta is so large that I think it shocks people. And I think that it's hard to understand how these things all intertwingle with one another. And so people see big budget and they say 20% or 26% or whatever number it is. And it's hard to get that they're different things, and they should.
And I really do think it's spillover from that's hurting the town budget, because the town, we're one of the lowest rates in Chittenden County, and Charlotte, that's lower, doesn't have police and fire coverage as we do. It's like we are on the very conservative spending end.
Communications at state level.
All right, guys, I'm gonna hop off.
Good night,
Yeah.
everybody.
Night all. Thanks for all the hard work.